Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by two fellow recruiters, Kaitlin and Kiley. How you both doing?
Great.
Right?
Happy to be here.
Good, good. Well, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be good. It's going to be a nice insight into the job market for people applying or people looking or potentially looking, and so on and so forth. Kaitlin, welcome. This is the second show we've done together. Looking forward to this.
If you have me back, I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
No, you're only the second person to ever get a second invite, so you must be doing something right.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I deserve that, but I'll take it.
Kylie, I'll do your intro first. So you entered the wonderful world of recruitment back in 2012. You started off at the mighty K Force, but that was an experience. I know they were a rather large agency. You started off there as a candidate generation specialist, and you worked all the way up to senior talent manager. You then moved on to Vonage as a technical recruiter, and you are now currently at DigitalOcean. You started off as a technical recruiter, and you've progressed all the way up to senior technical recruiter, and you've been there for around 6.5 years. Does that sound about right, my friend?
Sounds about right. And it's been a fun and interesting journey, as I'm sure we can all relate to in the technical recruitment field.
Cool. And Kaitlin, welcome back. You started off in recruitment back in 2015, university recruiter at Microsoft. You then went on to be a recruiter at Samsung, and you've progressed really nicely through the ranks at Bishop Fox, starting off as a technical recruiter, then a senior technical recruiter, and you are now managing the recruitment to Bishop Fox, which is where you are today, and you've been there for just over 6 years.
I know. I actually think I'm just like Kylie. You said you're almost 6.5 years. I'm right, like coming over 6 now. So it's a long time, and been a lot of change, just like you said, the last 6 years.
Hmm. Yeah, I have. Yeah. We're gonna have a recruiter off. Like we're gonna have to. Yeah, I'll start off. I know we talked before. It seems like ages ago since we did that planning call us three, doesn't it? Was it last year?
At least 2 months ago.
I think it was last. I don't know. They were made. I don't know. Anyway, it was a while ago. So we were talking about market conditions. Obviously, 2021, 2022 was crazy. I think we were saying 2023 has like really dipped down, and there's been some tough times for certain candidates out there. But what are you two seeing out in the market? How are you finding things? Perhaps I'll come to you first, Kaitlin.
Oh man, because I was making so many faces. So on the one hand, I feel like I have my perspective as somebody who's doing the hiring, but also I have a couple of friends on the job market, and what I'm hearing from them is making me like rethink recruiting altogether because I think that in some fields, there's a lot of tightening and in others, there's more opportunity. But I think if you're trying to stay in tech and even trying to stay in cyber, it's a little tight right now. And I'm hearing a lot of people going through 6, 7, 8 step interview processes with challenges, with all day on-site interviews and still not getting offers or getting all the way to the end and getting actually we're rescoping the role or actually we're just closing the role. We're not filling it at all. And I understand how that happens. I've seen it in my recruiting career, but that I think is something really brutal that we weren't seeing as much 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Kylie, what are you thinking about the market, mate? What's going on out there, buddy?
Yeah, first off, Kaitlin, I agree. I think it's been an interesting shift, right? Some of these leaders are now looking for what I'll call the perfect fit, right? They tend to be a little bit more particular. They feel like the market and the pendulum has potentially swung in their favor, and they can put the candidates through these longer processes. And obviously, that certainly has impacts, right? And we could chat a little bit more about the potential long-term impacts for companies that are choosing to take that approach and to follow that process. But more broadly, I also see impacts from our end, candidate compensation packages. Companies are reviewing those given the shift in what we're seeing in the market. And just to give some perspective, right, predominantly doing tech recruitment, so that's coming from that lens. But yeah, you're also having companies reevaluating compensation structures, packages, and also hearing from some candidates they are more open than they once were. So I certainly think there's some reality in the shifts, but again, not in all spaces, right? We at DigitalOcean, we focus on the AI and ML sector, and there's some niche segments here like that, I think are operating in a different reality.
Yeah, I think it's just such a crazy time, isn't it? Like post-COVID, like pretty much everyone overhired in 21 or back end of 21 and 22. So then that was the aftermath of that. And then AI and machine learning, you mentioned there, Kylie, that coming in. I know some companies just not replacing any juniors because they've got really good in-house AI capabilities. So that's playing a factor. And then you've got people like Meta, Elon Musk chopping, making redundancies, but the stock price going up and getting more profitable. Then other companies are seeing that and going, hang on, why don't we do that? So it's like this crazy mental storm. And like recruitment's always been very cyclical business. It's a little bit feast and famine, depending on what kind of sector you're in. But like the minute it's just, the world's just absolutely mental, isn't it? It's crazy. But Kaitlin, if I come back to you, what I know you mentioned there, one of your friends having a bit of a tough time and stuff like that. What advice would you have for people that are having a tough time? What can help people stand out and stuff like that?
I think as somebody who's been on the job market before for a longer period than I'd like, for a 3-month stretch or a 6-month stretch, and I know right now that might seem like nothing because there's people who've been on the market longer than that. I think the first thing is like, you can't take it personally. As a recruiter, I also see people, in the search for the perfect candidate, I see very good candidates get rejected, or I see somebody who maybe would be a really good fit lose out to somebody who's just like a little bit better of a fit. And you can't take it personally because you're going to make yourself miserable. So I think you have to have a lot of resilience in the market right now. And I also think you really have to leverage your network. I mean, for recruiter roles, I don't think a lot of those are getting posted. I think people are going straight to their network first. So I think understanding who's in your network, really shoring up connections with past coworkers. If you're on the job market, really looking at the job board where you have a connection with somebody at the company, think that's your first starting point, and your best bet is you try and take that pathway. What do you guys think?
Yeah, what do you think, Kylie? I've got a few ideas. I'll come to you first, bro.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I concur with certainly leveraging your network. Getting referred to an opportunity in a position makes sure that your resume is getting in front of that hiring team. That's certainly something that you can do. I would also encourage anybody who's in that career search kind of process, be considerate of the job description. If it's a role that you are really keen on and you think you're a great fit for, take that extra time to try to tailor those requirements in that job posting to your background experience, and surface those relevant experience that you have the top of your CV, right? Make it easier for the recruiting and or hiring team to, see that you're a great fit and then prioritize you accordingly. I think a lot of times it may not be applicable for every role, right? Every role might not be that one that you really want. I think taking that step, as well as don't be afraid to reach out to that hiring team. You're in a fortunate position where that job posting has an indication of who that hiring manager is or who that talent acquisition partner is. A nice warm note certainly helps make sure that your profile gets prioritized and looked at appropriately.
Yeah, I think it's like slow down to speed up almost, because it's just too easy just to click. And I say it to people on the team here, just stop and think, because you take a bit of time, you do that personalization, you get a quicker, better response anyway. And yeah, definitely making sure you're a fit for the role, because I just think I don't know what it's like for you two at the minute, but I can imagine you're just getting bombarded. I can imagine it's like crazy. So yeah, I think just really probably looking at it from the other person's point of view. I know you just said as well, Kaitlin, it's never personal. I think again, keeping that in mind as well. If you've got, I don't know how many recs you've both got live at the minute. I know both probably got a lot, but if you've got, for argument, easy figure sake, 10 live, and you've got 10 times the amount of apps or triple, quadruple the amount of apps, people just need to remember you're not trying to wind them up, or you're not like, and also you have lives as well. Like you got to finish work at some point. So I think people just perhaps need to understand that. Just a quick question for you both, because when I ask different people this, I know, Kylie, you just mentioned there a little note goes, how do you like to be approached? Like, Kaitlin, if I'm applying for Bishop Fox next week as a hacker, pen tester, whatever, what is like the best way I can approach you to give myself the best chance of getting through the process nicely?
Yeah, good question. I don't mind being reached out to on LinkedIn. It's always sometimes the people will just reach out and be like, I'm generally interested in your company. And that's not super helpful. I really need somebody to say, I am interested in this role. I read the job description. Here's where I meet your qualifications. Here's why. That is helpful to me in knowing that I should go pull you out of the stack, so to speak, or put you in front of the hiring manager, because otherwise it's like me doing the detective work. And if I have 1,000 applications and I'm getting many messages on LinkedIn, my motivation to do the detective work is low. Yeah. Kylie, you were nodding. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah, I think unfortunately there's a reality to that. And I think what might be lost in this current state is that TA teams are typically asked to do more, much like many other parts of the organizations in this current economic climate. And with that, I think taking the time to put yourself in the other person's shoes, because we all like to do that, right? Empathize and really try to see it from the other person's perspective. And to Caitlin's point, 100%, those things will help allow us all to be successful in a quicker, more timely manner. So I know it is more time, energy, and effort, and especially if you've been on the hunt for X amount of months, you can understand that you might not be willing to do this in every case again, but be intentional and try to go after those opportunities or companies that you really see yourself not only being a great fit for the role, but also aligning with from that cultural point of view. And that's a good side note, right? Don't overlook the cultural alignment aspects, especially if you're considering a smaller organization where culture is something that is extremely important for those organizations in most cases.
Yeah, cool. Thanks both of you. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to hear how you like to be approached. And again, I think it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes again. And what you said there as well, Karen, as well, you want people to prove that they've essentially proved to you that they've actually looked, and they're not just going, I just running recruitment for Bishop Fox. I'm just paying. It's too easy. Same for you, Kylie. It's just so easy especially these days. It's so easy for us all just to reach out to anyone. So really showing that you have done that extra due diligence, taken that time and care. And I think for people listening, most people won't do this. So if you do it, you'll stand out. If you just take that extra 5 minutes, and it might seem like it's taking longer, but it's a case of, I think, just keeping the goal in mind. Like, what is the goal? To get through the process in a speedily manner, in a nice way, and get an offer. That's the goal. So I think if you take this time, it'll really help.
Yeah, Kylie, lay into the AI. I saw your ping that the automated AI tools may not be the solution. And I have feelings too, but lay into them.
Kylie, before you came in, for everyone listening, Kaitlin was a little bit late, but we don't mind. Before you came in, Kaitlin, me and Kylie were chatting, and Kylie was like, "What's it like agency side at the minute, mate?" Because they're Kylie getting approached quite a lot, and a lot of that will be automated. And you can just tell these days, can't you? Like when it is just pure automated email campaign. And don't get me wrong, like there is some wins to be had there, but I think it's getting watered down as time goes on because everyone's aware of it now.
Isn't that the case, right? And I think AI is obviously, we're starting to see the implications and the use cases where it may or may not be applicable in a broader space. But as it relates to the topic here at hand, I know there's tools out there where individuals can easily blast out their resume to a number of employers. And I'm not saying don't do that, right? Again, just doubling down on the intentional aspect for organizations and or roles that you really see yourself being a great fit for. Because yes, to Thomas's point, right, on the back end, you can tell in most situations, right, whether this was just blasted out or whether there was more tailored approach in regards to your application. And it does matter, right? If you make our lives easier in reviewing it, again, I think the average time for somebody, a hiring manager or recruiter, to review a profile is a matter of seconds, right? So anything you can do to make sure at the top of your profile, it's clear that you have the skills and you're interested, that's going to really help you.
I don't know. Is there anything, like, same question can be for both of you, or whoever wants to go first, but Is there anything that candidates have done lately that you've just gone, oh, that was so wicked. I'm so glad he or she did that, or anything they've done that's impressed you, or anything that anyone's done that's jumped them to the front of the queue? Maybe like over the last few months, few weeks, anything at all on that front that could help the listeners?
Yeah, I can go first, and then I'm keen on understanding Caitlin's side of this as well. I'll tell you that the most interesting way that somebody tried to get in front of me is, for those of you that aren't familiar, here at DigitalOcean, Sammy the Shark is our mascot. And I had somebody, a designer, right, who had sent me personal gift items around a little shark koozie that was like self-made, probably coming from Etsy or some provider there, but it was super cute. And they also did a lot of other things that kind of shared their portfolio and made some tailor designs and things to advocate for themselves being a good fit for the role. So that was the most probably unique and over the top. I do not recommend everybody takes that approach, right? The probably more appropriate example is if it is a technical product-based company and it's something that you can consume or utilize, showcase that you have that depth. For us, we provide public cloud infrastructure. It was super easy. The one example that comes to mind is a solution architect pulled together a demo and a little proof of concept utilizing our platform unprompted. That spoke volumes, even though that individual, I probably shouldn't share too many details here. Yeah, that individual really stood out from the broader group because they clearly put forth effort that was directly targeted towards us. And it showcased not only their abilities relevant to the role, but also their passion, right? Passion for the company and organization. Kaitlin, I'm curious. Yeah, tell me about your most interesting story as it relates to somebody going above and beyond here.
I don't have any stories like that. So, the people who want to apply it to Bishop Fox should be listening because nobody does anything like that for me. And maybe I'm overlooking, but I do think sometimes there's an attitude of the recruiter is a hurdle, or it's really what can you do for me? And you do forget that there is a person on the other side of the table that, like, for the most part, the recruiter is really wants to fill the role, right? So, like, they want you to win. They want you to succeed. Like, they want you to be paid fairly too. Like, we want to work alongside candidates for the win. Like, we got into the business because we like making the company better. We like making people's lives better with a job. So I think that the approaches that Kiley described, they do take into account the hiring team, including the recruiter. They try to go a little bit further. And I think it's nice. I think a lot of people have been a little adversarial with recruiters over the last couple of years or just seen them as a hurdle. But I think that's a mistake in your job approach, especially now when the market's a little tighter.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, Kelly, no one's going to beat that story, man. That story is like absolutely mega. Like, me and Kelly are like, what?
I was like, dang, I'm going to smile this way as I talk to people who are job searching. I love the creativity. As a recruiter, I used to be when things were the market was maybe a little better and the budgets were a little larger. I'd really take things that a candidate mentioned while we were talking and I would follow up and send it. If we were talking about a book, I would send the book in the mail. If they were really like, oh, wow, we really love your swag, I'd send something even if it was before offer. And I think that those are things I used to do as a recruiter. I think for candidates to follow up with the article, if you mentioned it, or go that little extra mile, the market's shifted. And for candidates to do that stuff, they'll stand out too.
It does go both ways, doesn't it, too? It's the appreciation goes both ways, whether it's us as recruiters and TA partners sharing an article about maybe the organization on a topic that you discussed during your conversation or vice versa. And again, I think this gets back to really what I hope for and aspire in our broader space is there to be that mutual respect, mutual understanding of the other person's experience, right, as you go through this.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that's such a good point because the market, the market is either going to be client led or candidate led, and it will always flip from one way to the other all the time. So you're right. Like everyone, it's for start. I said this before on LinkedIn, but it's nice to be nice, and it flips both ways. So it really is worth what you just said there, Killian. Like I said, taking that longer term approach, especially if you're in a niche or a niche, as I say, it really does come round. So I think if it'll either pay you now or it'll pay you in the future. So yeah, good points, both of you there. What I don't know, maybe some of this stuff you two can't say, maybe you can, but I'd be interested to hear where you both see them the market going for companies, for job seekers? Is there any kind of information you can share with us that you've been having internal discussions from where you're seeing things going, or any predictions you've got for the rest of this year and next year? Perhaps I'll come to you first, Kylie, if that's okay, mate. Where do you see things going market-wise for people?
Yeah, predictions as it relates to this, they're always hard to pin down, right? Obviously, a lot of the current decisions that have been made for a lot of organizations are driven by these macroeconomical trends. So I think until we see shifts there, it'll be there's a tail there. So it'll be a little bit interesting to see once the economy starts coming back around how these things shift. I don't foresee that happening within the next 6 months personally. And so in this next kind of 6-month interim period, I do still see there being fewer job opportunities in certain segments, right? Obviously, my lens that I view these things from is predominantly the technical segment. So take this for what it is. But yeah, I do expect there to be fewer jobs in that segment. Mark Zuckerberg and other leaders are currently making comments around the quote unquote benefit that they're seeing from running leaner. And I think as leaders maybe understand that and look into the data, and if that continues to be the trend and there's a story or a narrative that's being spun in regards to the benefits of running lean, you could see this continuing to be the operating space where they're asking folks to do more with less, right? And one of the arguments there is that they can move quicker, right? Less layers, they can move quicker. And that's always been an argument, right? But I think when times are good, hey, I got this new project and initiative, add some more resources, right? I think that's the easier answer to the growth question. How do we grow? So for me, I do think it's going to still remain in the tech segment, slightly tighter market, meaning more employer driven. And I do still think that they're also going to continue to try to seek that, dare I say, perfect fit, right? Is there ever a perfect fit? I think some of these leaders and teams will continue to aspire to have that because they're going to have to do more with less.
I hate the perfect fit.
There's never a perfect fit, right?
It doesn't exist. Yes. I also think sometimes you cheat yourselves out of the person who really has the passion and the drive to reach a little bit. I think sometimes the people I've seen do the most are the ones who are like, I know I need to learn this piece of the pie, but I really want to be here. I really want this role. Like the person who sees where there is the room for growth and really wants to go get it, or the person who's taking a step up in their career. I think sometimes when you say, oh, I want the perfect fit, it means the person's already been doing that job for 5 years and they already check every single box. The person's already been there, done that, which also means the person might already be bored. And so they're going to show up and be like, okay, great, nothing new, nothing to see here, not super energized by this. What's in it for them? And if it's just paycheck, that might not be enough to really have an engaged employee who can move the needle. I think sometimes when somebody's reaching a little bit, they're excited to dig in, and those are the folks who really move the needle. I think that's what you lose with the perfect fit.
Obviously, we've talked about certain roles that are struggling and stuff like that. I think, Kylie, you were saying like machine learning and AI are in demand. The question I'm trying to basically ask is, if I'm listening thinking, God, this all sounds a bit scary, and yes, the market is hard, and I think if you two was to ask me what my market predictions is, my answer would probably be like, the longer I do this job, the worse I'm getting at predicting what's going on. It's so flipping hard to know what's going to happen. And sometimes I wish I did, but I just don't really. It's hard to predict. It's an unpredictable world. But I'm basically asking, what can I do to future-proof myself? Like, Kaitlin, is there any roles at Bishop Fox at the minute that are like, okay, this is still not massively candidate led, but it's still pretty candidate led, or this is a particular skill set that we're really valuing at the minute because of X, Y, and Z? Is there any skills there that you're like really wanting more of that the listeners could go, I could upskill there to make myself more desirable?
I've had some roles where I've been surprised to hear from candidates just how much movement they are seeing. So for example, like when I was hiring product, I was still hearing from candidates sometimes like I got an offer from another company in the span of 3 days. And I know they were a good candidate, but holy smokes, to hear that is still happening in this market, I think that's a good indicator of health in that particular segment. I do think for a lot of leadership roles, I'm seeing a lot of people on the market, a lot of candidates. I do think still being willing to roll up the sleeves and be that individual contributor, that mid to senior level, there's still a little bit more demand for the people who are really doing. And I see some of those roles still coming through and seeing more movement and less candidates and more need to go digging. Is that lining up with what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, I can say that, yeah, there's definitely demand for individuals that have these certain niche skill sets, right? For us, just to give some further context around these specific areas where one could upskill themselves. Obviously, looking at the trends, AI and ML is certainly a trend. If you are in engineering, maybe considering moving into that segment space, because what we can see is that there's certainly a shortage in the supply, right? So in those opportunities, companies will come to realize at some time in their recruitment process that they might need to become more lax. They might need to provide more training. And then they look for individuals that have that kind of baseline, right? That strong baseline and align on these other cultural aspects, and then provide those learning and training opportunities that enable these people to grow in role. So I think that's one area. Additionally, this is all tied to the cloud space, right? With this, the cloud evolution has been, or continues to be, in my opinion, at least, the longest single driver of a tech boom in history. And look at those trends, because I can tell you that there's certainly shortages in skill sets that enable the cloud. And if you're somebody looking to figure out, hey, how can I find that first job, or how can I pivot my career, right? We're seeing there's a huge supply of this mid-management level individuals that are being impacted by these number of layoffs. How can those mid-managers, who are probably great ICs at some time in their career, how can they reskill themselves? To Kaitlin's point, how can they be closer to the action, right? That individual contributor actually providing that direct value. I think as the organizations have taken a look at how they're operating, right? Operationally, they have to ask themselves these questions, right? Hey, who are closest to our customers? Who understand our customers the best? We can't touch or consider decreasing or saving costs there. Where are they going to look? They tend to look at these higher level positions historically. And I think there's an opportunity for those individuals to rethink, hey, where are the industry trends? Where can I skill up, and where do my passions lie within those trends? And I think that's the broader recommendation that I would have for job seekers, especially those ones that have been impacted and might be further along in their career and looking for packages and things of that nature that are hopefully going to be closer or more in line with their.
And I don't want to be, and I don't think, as we sit here, we give advice, and I don't want to be hypocritical, but like for myself, if I was on the job market, I'm currently heading up talent acquisition at a startup, I would be really realistic about, I might need to just be a recruiter. Like my next job, I might be strictly an individual contributor because of where the market is at, because of where there's more demand. So I would, if I was really actively searching, I would reskill to do that. So we're giving that advice, but that's also the advice that I would live with, even though it's really nice to manage a team. That's where I want my career to go. That's where I work to get there. I would still say, if I need that job, I would take that step and just know that everything is cyclical. And the fact that I already have this experience, it will cycle again, and I will get back to a place where I'm managing a team again and could potentially even go farther, because it's all going to cycle. And I think you go to a company and you do good work, there's always opportunities that you don't see the day that you accept the job, because things shift and change.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I think it is sometimes taking a step back. Like if I go back to 2022, it was a great time to be alive. It was ridiculous. It was unsustainable. And I think like you said, it is cyclical, and sometimes you got to roll with the good times, roll with the bad. And as long as you're thinking a little bit ahead, and when things are good, maybe be a bit more reserved. And I know not everyone is, but perhaps when the market's booming, maybe think it won't be like this forever, then it helps for when it's not. But I think another thing as well is, you said there, like taking a more hands-on position, even if you've come from maybe director or management role. I think that's good advice. I'm seeing a lot of contract positions as well for talent acquisition at the minute. I don't know if you're noticing that. And I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know what the hourly rates are for contracting. But if that gets your foot in the door, like I say, who knows where it could lead? At least that's something coming in for the time being. That might not be a bad idea either.
My first job at Microsoft was contract, and it was, being a contractor was stressful. Wanting to get converted was stressful, but As somebody early career, I always recommend people who are early career to look at contracts as well. Those contracts might have a lower dollar amount per hour, but sometimes that means you're getting experience maybe like a step above what you would get if you were really interviewing and it was permanent and you were going through the full stack. I think contracts can really open the door to get experience. I think anybody who's also maybe shifting industry a little bit, sometimes the barrier to entry is lower for contract, and it can really help build up what your resume looks like and build your network and make that intro to a company.
Cool, yes. And I'm going to come on to working arrangements now, on-site, remote. You always get, like, for anyone listening, if anyone wants to do a big post on LinkedIn, just talk about on-site and remote, because like it really gets people talking. If I come to you first, Kylie, what are you seeing in relation to on-site and remote? Are you seeing a big shift back to the office and stuff like that? What are you seeing with on the candidate side? Are people warming to it? Are people still dead against it? What's going on? What's going on out there, mate, with working arrangements?
Yeah, and continuing on the trend of the pendulum swinging back and forth here, right? I think during COVID times, obviously, a lot of companies that weren't maybe remote first had to adopt this kind of notion. And I think the early signs were really strong around productivity, and a lot of companies making the statement that they were going to continue on this trend. And here we are, right? 2024, I think that pendulum has swung back. Or in the candidate that I'm engaging with and speaking with, and even speaking to my recruiting colleagues and my broader kind of network, it's really clear there's a lot of companies that are now pulling people back into the office or requiring them to consider relocation if they want to remain employed. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. And quite frankly, I'm fortunate in being a talent recruiter, right, in the space where I do work for a predominantly remote first organization. And, you know, I think those drivers from the candidate perspective on what's most important and pressing, right? The individuals that are at the point in their career where they're looking for work-life balance, they're looking for that flexibility. Remote environments are appealing, and we're seeing a lot of people applying here that are solely driven by the fact that they want to remain a fully remote employee, even if their employer is offering them some sort of a hybrid model. So yeah, certainly a large uptick in companies, and from what I'm seeing, pulling individuals back in, but then also applicants applying, looking for that fully remote role. And I think from an employer perspective, if you're struggling to acquire talent, I think that's a strong selling aspect that you should leverage or consider leveraging if you have. Kaitlin, curious your take. What are you thinking on your end?
We're also pretty much fully remote, and I do think that helps with talent acquisition. What I recently heard from LinkedIn is that 50% of all applications on LinkedIn are submitted to the 10% of jobs that are fully remote. So that also explains why, like, Kylie and I might be feeling so slammed with applications, because because the number of remote jobs has shrunk. People are interested in those jobs. And then I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the top, where when there's such a huge volume of applications going to a relatively small number of open jobs, you really have to find a way to stand out of that pile. And as a recruiter, we have roles where we get 300, 400 applications in a day. That volume is crazy, and it's not really sustainable. So being able to take that extra step, reach out to the recruiter or the hiring manager on LinkedIn, really pitch your value prop, that makes a difference, and it can help be the differentiator when the market's so tight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have had a taste of that remote world, and depending on what stage you're at in life, it's if there's little ones running around or family, it's a massive pull factor. But yeah, that'll be why you're getting hit up by so many agencies, mate, because of the remote thing as well.
And the flip side of that too is some employers, especially if your talent acquisition model is more at the entry or junior level, we hear from individuals that want to be in the office. If you're early in your career and your professional journey, I think there's a balance that I think organizations need to consider seeking there, with having some sort of locations where there are those opportunities, especially if your philosophy, like I said, if you target a lot of entry level individuals, right? I think there's a lot of benefit to have an office setting, right? So it's not one solution fits all, right? But yeah, from a candidate point of view, I think most experienced individuals are certainly looking for those remote first environments.
I want to see the studies. I think we don't have all of the data yet. I know pre-COVID, some of the studies said the proximity of your desk really dictates how much you can get things done, and things can move a lot faster when you're physically closer to your coworkers. Curious if that has changed at all. I'd love to see some of the data on working remote or hybrid versus fully in person. But I mean, I know for Bishop Fox, when COVID hit and we went fully remote, it did change the culture of those people who were working in the Phoenix office. And I was one of them, together 3 days a week. And we absolutely had attrition from people who were just like, I liked being in the office. I liked seeing my friends. I liked hacking cool stuff alongside other people. And when that isn't there anymore, like, I'll go somewhere else and just be a mercenary and make as much money as possible if I have to sit at home by myself in my office. And I think on the one hand, there's the majority of people want to work fully remote, but there's absolutely people who are like, this is my socialization and I want to be in an office. And I think if you are bringing people to an office, then what is culture? There should be a real value prop and a pitch. And like, working in a bunch of cubicles is not the culture that makes me be like, yes, I want to come in. I think it all comes back to the culture.
Yeah, I think as well, what you just said there, Kate, I think when companies change strategies, I think that's where it gets really tricky, because it is, you're attracting different sorts of people. And I've seen companies do it in the recruitment world where they're like, yeah, we're fully, like during COVID, they're like, yeah, fully remote. And then it's everyone back to the office and they lose recruiters left and center because it is just so unsettling for people. I think I'm going to send you both a pod. It was, the pod's called Pivot, and they got this chap on who basically studied working arrangement. He basically dedicated his life to working arrangements for like the last 2 years. So I'm going to send you it both, because it's all about. He was basically saying that ultimately most people prefer some form of hybrid. Like, even if you're in a remote environment, like maybe meeting up and chilling with the team every 6 weeks in a place where you're all together, or like you just said, going to the office once a week. Do you reckon you two would like some element of hybrid or meet up because for the social element? Is that what would suit you? Both nodding.
Yeah, there's extreme benefits from meeting somebody face to face and being in that type of setting where you can actually get to know somebody as an individual, as opposed to a structured hangout, Google Hangout meeting, or whatever video conferencing, where there's an agenda. You don't really have that opportunity to get to know somebody at a personal level. And I think that we can all relate that having a personal connection with a peer colleague makes it much easier during the time where maybe you have to be short because you're limited with how much time you can spend crafting a message. Therefore, it's beneficial to everyone, right? So I agree, right? Having some sort of connection point in person would be my preferred environment.
I agree. I can't imagine onboarding fully remote and then always being fully remote. Like, I onboarded my first couple of years at Bishop Fox were hybrid, but I was in office 3 days a week plus. So I feel like I built a lot of relationships cross-departmentally with people who I don't work with on a day-to-day basis. That has absolutely helped me be more effective in my job. And when I have to ask somebody for something with a rush, or it's unusual, or I need a favor, they're a lot more likely to say yes because they know me and because we have a relationship and they know that I don't do that stuff. And I think that when you're fully remote, it's easy to assume the worst, that like they have bad intentions or they're not good at their job and that's why they need help. But when you have a relationship, it's easy to assume the best. And I think that is part of why investing in bringing people together does add value to the business. I think it does help the business move on a day-to-day basis.
And just one thing to add on to this topic, from the candidate's perspective, I'd encourage those that are really struggling or been on the market for a little while, consider the companies and organizations that might require you to be on site if it's in your local commutable proximity, of course. And then get in there and improve yourself, and then have the conversation around maybe there's some flexibility, and obviously most appropriate to set that expectation as part of that interview process, right? No one likes surprises and everyone wants to be positioned for success from both perspectives. But I think sometimes we're seeing the larger volume of applicants because we're remote first companies, and that LinkedIn data is also indicating that these companies like ours are getting the lion's share of applicants. But that tells me that there's an opportunity there for job seekers as well, and to be a little bit more perhaps open-minded and have the conversation as part of the interview process. And I think you might be surprised around certain leaders and their direct flexibility on maybe a hybrid approach. So yeah, I would encourage folks to throw their hat in the ring, just have the chat.
I think definitely. I think as well, you mentioned it there, Kaitlin, about when you was in the office, building relationships. When you think about it, and you said about juniors and stuff like that, it's such a good point. Even like romantic relationships, loads are started in the office. Friendships are started in the office. If you're a bit older and you've got your social circle and this, that, and the other, probably not as bothered. But also, if you're like a young girl or a young guy and you're like sat at home, it's a massive thing. So relationships in the offices, guys, yeah.
Kylie and I both just dropped in the chat that we met our partners at work. It would have been a lot harder fully remote, I think, for us to hit it off. Although, to be fair, we were in a lot of Zoom calls together before we met in person.
Kylie, what about you? Would you have got that chemistry going, mate, virtually or not?
No, my wife and I always joke around about that. I think the company at the time that I was working for, they hired a lot of tenured professionals, and we were probably two of the only younger career individuals at the organization. So you quickly spot each other. And obviously one conversation led to another. And here I am, eight years later, happily married with our first child. So yeah, there's something to be said about those romantic connections that can be made for sure. Especially here, we're living proof.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Let's say romantic, learning through osmosis, friendships. There's loads of stuff, but I say something's got to give, because if no seniors want to come in, or not as many seniors want to come in, but the juniors need to come in, it's like, hang on, something's got to give. And
the juniors from the seniors, and if they're not there, what are we doing?
Exactly.
The value prop. I really think it does come down to the value prop. I'm not saying every office needs to be like Google when they used to bring the fresh cookies around at 3 p.m. Like, I that's a very good value prop. And I don't demand that at every in-person environment I go to, but I do want to go to an office that's like generally pleasant to be in. There's lots of co-working spaces with individual offices these days that are really nice. And like the proximity to a coffee shop or places to get lunch, like that's enough to make me be like, yes, I'll get dressed and put on makeup, and this is a good thing. So I do think, what's the value prop for people to come in? And if your value prop's good enough, your seniors will want to come in as well. And then your juniors really win. And like I said, we lost seniors when we no longer were in the office, because some of those folks were like, no, the value prop is the community of working with these people in person. When that's gone, then I guess I can take any remote job that'll pay me the most, because I lost the thing that I valued.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because if it is fully remote and there's no interaction at all, like you say, if you're hacking a web app and you never see anyone, you're hacking a web app. All right, the client might be cooler and there might be some kind of differences within that, but yeah, I think it's harder to get that USP as a company. If that's the whole culture thing, that's what drives people and brings people together and gets people sticking around and gets people doing things that they would never do because they're bought into the mission and where things are going. So yeah, it opens up a whole different loads of different things. But yeah, cool. Okay, guys, we've talked a lot about when people approach you and stuff like that and how to get noticed. Just if I have got noticed, and I'll come to you, Kylie, I'm applying for a job with you, mate. I've just got noticed and I'm in process with you now. What have I got to do, mate, to impress you and move forward in the process? And what have I got to do to anything that I should avoid doing that would perhaps frustrate you as well?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, hopefully we can offer some insights here that'll help folks. For us, because we are more of a entrepreneurial startup type of environment and feel, again, those cultural aspects and showcasing the alignment and passion towards the mission. And I think those are really critical pieces that I look for in just about every candidate. And also, if you're not aware, data will suggest that the people who are the top performers at organizations have a real connection to the mission of the company or the culture, right? So again, those things are extremely important to get across in these conversations. So do your research, right? I'm sure most companies have their core values and things of that nature posted somewhere online. So do your research there would be one key trend. The other one I would say is, try to come prepared with meaningful examples that showcase those skills and quality, right? Here, we try to encourage and train our interviewers on the STAR model. So if you're not familiar with that, I'd suggest that you look that up. That would be another recommendation, right? And just to give some context, right, what STAR stands for is situation, tasks, actions, and results. And if you can think of examples that you can frame in that type of capacity, that's going to address a lot of potential doubts or answer a lot of potential questions that the interviewer might have about your skill sets as it relates to the specific areas that they're focused on. So those are two big ones. Kaitlin, I'm curious to get your thoughts. What could people do to impress you over there at Bishop?
I am a STAR fan too. So I absolutely think when we were talking about AI, I also think using it in a way that it makes your job search easier can be like, help me tie this story back to STAR, or what are some sample interview questions you think I might get for this role? Or here's the job description. What are some sample interview questions I might get from that? I think that I've seen candidates that should do really well, and maybe they interview really well with me, and then they fall flat with the hiring manager. And I think that prep is a big piece of that. And sometimes it is your job to lose as you get past the recruiter. So what are you doing to make sure your examples are really tight, that your technical skills are dusted off? And AI can help you speed that piece of the puzzle up so it's not such like a huge lift every time you interview. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think being prepared's a massive one. And I think as well, if I think to what I'm doing, or Kaitlin, what you're doing, Kylie, what you're doing, we want to see people that care and are into it and are going to stick in process. I'm just thinking now, I've got something coming towards the end now. It's been 4 stages. That's a lot of my time. If I thought this person wasn't a good fit and wasn't into it and wasn't preparing and wasn't conscientious and caring, I'm too busy to be faffing around. And you two are as well. Like you've got to, again, just take a step back and think about it. Like, you don't want to make yourself look silly in front of, in my case, the client, or in your case, the fellow members of your team. So I think it's just showing the recruiter, whether it's one of us 3 or another recruiter, that you care and you have prepared. And we're living in the age of the internet. This is all like really easy stuff to do if you're prepared to take the time. And I think just taking like 20 minutes, if you do 20 really intense minutes, that's more than a lot of people are doing. I think you could probably, if you can retain information well, you can probably crowbar a couple of really slick sentences into an interview, make probably all 3 of us go, oh, Jesus, they prepared well.
Yeah. And it's important to know, not every interviewer has been formally trained or interviews on a regular basis. For better or for worse, there are poor interviewers out there. And unfortunately, then that burden falls on the job seeker, right? And take that approach, right? Try to make sure you're going to hit the point that you hope exemplify your ability to be successful in the role. Because the reality is we're all struggling with time constraints and things of that nature too. That interviewer may be a good interviewer, but they may be in back-to-back meetings. If you can help them help you, right? Situation here, right? If you can help them, I think that's going to increase your chances of success substantially. That approach.
I think really tying it back to the job description, your experience, and making sure your stories are hitting those experience bullets that they're looking for, those responsibilities they're looking for on the job description. That's something you can do ahead of time. And like we were talking about, like Tom and Kylie said, you can finesse your way in there, I think, with a lot of questions. If you've already prepared some of those really clean STAR examples, you can work them in. And Kylie just called out the importance of data and like really leveraging data and outcomes when you can in your examples. I think the same goes for your resume. If you do a really short cover letter, bringing that in. I think, and sometimes I think people put the data in, but I'm like, but what did you do to make this data happen? What did you do to see this outcome? What was the result of that outcome? So I think really using it, but thinking about how you're situating it in the broader story of what actions did you personally take? How did you get the rest of the team on board? How did it then cause this trend in the data? And what was the result of ideally a positive trend in the data? Like, what did that give you? More time, cost saving, greater candidates? What did you turn out with the data?
Yeah, no, Definitely. Also, as well, I think before, Kelly, when you were like, the people see the recruiter there as a hurdle, like we do all want the same thing. If you're right for the role, we want you to get the role. Like I saw a post the other day, and this recruiter put some. I didn't read the whole way, but he put something like, "I've never met a recruiter that wants you to earn less money and stuff like that." Like we are genuinely there to help, so it is worth just doing all these things. And I think if you're ticking all these boxes, like the personalization piece, doing your research first, being nice and communicative, and just doing things right. I know that so many people don't do this stuff. So if you're good and you do all this stuff, then nothing's guaranteed, but you'll probably be having some success.
Certainly at the top of the pile, right? Certainly at the top of that, like, hey, these are the top 2 or 3 individuals that we would want to move forward with. I think those things certainly set you apart.
The other thing I think that sets people apart for me is clarity and simplicity. I think that you need to know your audience, and not every member of the recruiting team might be an expert in the role you're applying for. Not every member of the hiring team might be an expert in that role. They might be like a fellow stakeholder. They might be a member of the executive leadership team who that isn't their subject matter expertise. But I think the more clear you can make every bullet point on your resume, the more clear and concise you can make every story you tell, the more likely that person is to step away and say, wow, I really understand what they did. I really understand how they can add value to this organization. I can provide really nice notes and feedback that other interviewers can build on, that the leadership team can review at the end of the process. So I think you do yourself a big favor when you learn how to simplify what you're talking about. And then also knowing the people who understand are going to dig deeper. And that's when you can really be like, great, let's go way beyond the surface level. So being able to do both and knowing when's the time to do each one.
Listen, that is so true. I know from all these podcasts I've done that clear, concise communication, and the higher up you go the ladder, they're going, the more people, they just want you to get to the point. Like they're just so busy. Today's world, especially, it's just like, yeah, if you can learn to articulate yourself in a written form by getting to the point, like you'll have a lot more success than you otherwise would do. Definitely.
And also, every communication is a part of the interview process. So you might be working with the coordinator, you might be working with the recruiter. I don't know, but I have had candidates where I'm like, these communications I've gotten from them are so squirrely that I'm not sure I can recommend hiring them, because if they are this squirrely with my team during the interview process, that just feels like they're going to come on board and be really squirrely with their manager and their team once they start. And that's a red flag that we shouldn't ignore. So I do think take every single communication you're having with a member of the team seriously. If you're sending a thank you email, of course you want that to be on point. And then you're also opening yourself up for that person to email you with follow-up questions or comments or anything. And if you're opening that door, be sure you want that and that you are ready for it and being thoughtful in how you respond to it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've seen that reaching out thing go both ways, and yeah, it needs some. It certainly needs some thought. Definitely. So do you two think, like, since AI and automation is becoming so prevalent, I've got this theory that like the communication piece is just going to become more and more valuable because stuff's going to be automated. So if you can communicate well, you'll probably thrive because you'll just be managing like these automated tasks, and people will like you, and it'll all be great. So I've got this kind of theory that as life goes on, these communication skills are just going to really go up in value. Just be interesting to get both your thoughts.
Yeah, I can jump in there. Yeah, the emergence of AI, yeah, it is really interesting. And I think in some ways, these are certainly going to be tools that we can enable us to move quicker, to hopefully create still more personalized interactions while doing it at higher scale so we can perhaps consider more individuals. I think there are interesting use cases and opportunities there. But to your point, Thomas, I don't foresee it replacing a lot of these people aspects, right? So much of what we do is nuanced by conversations and your also ability to influence others. So in those aspects, I don't see AI. I know we're training a lot of these large language models, and ChatGPT, among others, are certainly showing some really promising results in their ability to respond and articulate. But if you really follow that space, right, it's limited by a token, right? So it's, hey, with the highest level of probability, yes, this is the right result or token that should be presented to the end user. That's limited, right? There's a limitation there. That nuance is going to be lost. And so, yeah, I tend to agree with you, Thomas. I think these things are tools for us. I think they're going to enable us to hopefully have more meaningful and personalized conversations and interactions at scale, which is helpful. But hopefully that doesn't take away from the people connections. And I think there's still question marks in my mind around how that's really going to unfold. But Kaitlin, yeah, this is an interesting topic space and how AI applies to what we're doing. So I'm curious to get your take.
Everybody knows you got to fact check it. So definitely it's a great starting point. And then the 30 seconds it takes to do a quick fact check is valuable because I have tried to test it for interviews and been like, hey, ChatGPT, tell me about like Bishop Fox's top services. And then some of the services it's dropped, I'm like, we don't offer that at all. So if a candidate was talking to me about how great it is that we offer XYZ, I'd be like, so that's nowhere on our website. It's nowhere on our LinkedIn. We do not offer that. We have literally never offered that. And ChatGPT just filled in the blanks. I think in your job search, fact check it. In recruitment or any industry you're in, if you're using it, fact check it always, of course. But the time saved and having that be the first piece of the work you do, you're still saving so much time. And with lean teams, you got to be thinking about those things.
Yeah, definitely. What's your thoughts on AI and everything on there, Kylie?
I'll just jump on. I think what I've been utilizing it for the most is those researching aspects, right? Researching new roles, new areas, helping uncover other maybe open source projects that might be relative, things of that nature. But to Kaitlin's point, AI kind of chatbots, ChatGPT in particular, right? They're only as good as the data that they've been trained on and fed. ChatGPT will tell you that I think its data was inputted a few years ago. It's not going to have the most up-to-date information. There's also this notion of, what do they call it? Basically where the tool or system can't actually give you an answer, a meaningful answer, and then it makes one up to its best ability and judgment. So yeah, definitely utilize it, but make sure that you're verifying. I think the other interesting aspect, and I don't have an answer for this, as we think about these generative AI tools and how they're going to impact the work and the workspace and things of that, just more broadly from a candidate's or employer perspective, from the employer perspective, I think there's a lot that remains to be seen, right? It has some inflated expectations, in my opinion, specifically, right? The challenges around risk of governance and to Kaitlin's point, the output validity, right? How valid is it? How accurate is it? And then as it relates to employers, the employee judgment or the employer judgment, right? Hey, how are these things accurate? Do we want to utilize these tools, right? How is this going to impact candidate experience? I think a big portion of what we do is we look for honest and genuine individuals to join our organization, people that have humility and that have empathy. I think those are qualities that are pretty unanimous around most idealistic work environments. And how does AI impact these things? Both, again, from both perspectives.
Yeah, I think some people out there, I think everyone should just embrace it because I honestly think it's going to make everything better. I know I was just saying, Kylie, before you came back in, I was saying to Kaitlin, if you're not on the phone, like Kaitlin is as good a recruiter as Kaitlin is, she should be on the phone speaking to candidates all the time. That's where all the value is. And I think AI can create a world where, as recruiters, we are just basically doing the talking and doing the bit that we do and making sure the candidates are right and the opportunities for that person, if they're a good fit for the company, using those powers of persuasion in a correct and right way. And that's where I think we can get to a world, I think we get there pretty soon, where that's all we do. And we don't do any of the stuff that we don't like doing. And if I talk in technical terms, like there's a lot of stuff in technical roles that these guys and girls just don't really like doing. They like doing, if we talk about hacking, they like hacking and they like, they perhaps don't love the report writing, and I'm sure some of them do, but it's kind of like, I think we can make our day-to-days more stimulating, more efficient, nicer. And I think if we embrace it, I did a post about it, we're in like a digital revolution now. The industrial revolution was like an amazing time if you got on board with it. And I think now is a digital revolution, and I think everyone that gets on board for it's got a real opportunity. So I think
I agree. And especially educating yourself on, again, pulling back to one of our earlier points around being prepared for these interviews, right? If there's an area or subject that you don't have depth of knowledge in and you think it would be beneficial to have some cursory level knowledge, obviously, like I said, honesty and being genuine is most important. But there's obviously a way where you can show that you've done the research. And I think ChatGPT from that side is a great tool.
So don't use GPT when it comes to Bishop Fox. And that's the main bit of advice we've got, yeah?
Double check it with the website. You gotta cross-reference. I was testing it because I ran through a bunch of different things for candidates, like how does ChatGPT do with cover letters? How does it do with resume? How does it do with building out your LinkedIn? How does it do with researching for an interview? And I ran through all sorts of scenarios, and that was one of the ones where I was like, wow, this is the biggest miss. And there were a handful of resume ones for my own resume where I was like, this is wild. Like, you are pulling years of experience that are rooted in nothing that is written on my resume or my LinkedIn, and creating summaries that are just completely unhinged from reality. That's why we still need the people to edit it.
I've seen 2 LinkedIn posts from 2 different people that don't know each other that are exactly the same. What's happened there? I've seen it, honestly. About a month ago, that was.
Kaitlin, I think you just need to send, if you're using ChatGPT, send a message to Sam Altman saying, hey, here's the updated list of what my company does here. Can you please update the large language model?
I'll leave just one thing that is an indicator that's not true, so I know who's using ChatGPT. Just keep an eye on it.
The thing is as well, Kylie, you mentioned before about the large language model. Listen, I'm not an AI expert, but I have a rough idea of how it works, and you've got to put the parameters would have to be so bespoke to completely replace a human. It's ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? I think the more understanding you've got, there's people out there that know way more than me, but we all have such bespoke needs, and there's so much nuance. I don't think there's any danger of that. I think it's all positive. I think it's all going to help if it's used in the right way. But listen, I said this show would be a long one, having 3 recruiters on, and I won't keep you too much longer. As we come to the end, if there's anything else you want to talk about, you two, as well, that you think will help the listeners, please feel free just to butt in. But it'd just be nice to hear what you two are listening to podcast-wise, any books you're listening to, anything you're finding useful at the minute for your mental health, self-development, to further your career, anything there that you two have both found that could help the listeners?
Okay, I'll go first. So I do think, number one, a book that I always recommend, certainly if you're in talent acquisition, is Powerful by Patty McCord, who spoke to how they built Netflix and tackled some novel hiring kind of goals and initiatives. And I think that just encourages people to think differently on how we go about identifying and also evaluating talent for what we need. So for anyone in talent acquisition, I would certainly encourage you to read that. Even beyond that, I think there's obviously helpful parallels that you can draw in regards to if you're an applicant, right? Looking for, hey, how do I differentiate myself, or how do I get skills that are going to make me really marketable? And that's the other notion that I'd encourage, especially job seekers, because I see right now the bigger pain point being allowing individuals opportunities to increase their chances. And I think about it from that lens of marketability. That's why I indicated earlier, look at the trends. Look about where your passions lie within those trends. How can you bolster your skills relative to those industry trends? Because there's one thing that I don't see changing, right? The supply and demand for professional talent, overarchingly, there's a shortage of talent. And even though it's more of a company-driven market, I would argue today, I do still think we're going to get to a point where we're right back to that point where, again, there's too many jobs and not enough skilled individuals. So I think any time that you have now, use that time wisely to continue to upskill yourself in these areas that are going to make you more marketable. That's probably the best advice I love to leave Juvers with, especially if you're job seeking, because I think the pain points right now are more acute on that side of the equation.
I think having an answer to this question is also just always a good thing as a candidate. But even if somebody flips it back on you as a member of the hiring team, I think people want to know that you're invested in learning and growing and keeping up with your field. One of the things I think I talked a lot about with remote, hybrid, in-office work is culture, and what is the culture if you're remote or if you're trying to bring people in. What's your value prop for bringing people in? What does the culture look like? I might have recommended this one before, but I enjoyed the book, The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. There's also some good podcasts that give you like a 45-minute too long didn't read of the book. If you're like, okay, what's this about? But I want the cliff notes. Some of the cliff notes are actually really good, but looks at a lot of different cases of building culture. And some of those examples have changed over the last couple of years. Like some of those companies have had a really strong culture, maybe lost it or don't have that reputation for it anymore, but still looking at the case study of how they built it, I think is really valuable, whatever field you're in. And if you're in recruiting, you're on the front lines of representing the company and representing the culture, and we are agents of building it. So I do think it's an interesting thing to be considering.
Cool. Listen, I really enjoy this. For everyone listening, it's been hard to get us three in a virtual room together. I know how busy like all of us are, and I'm sure it's the same for you too. Like you probably get hit up a lot on LinkedIn, and it's hard to get back to everyone all the time. So I'm really like thankful that we've all got together and done this, and there's loads of stuff that's helpful for the listeners. So do you think we've about smashed it, you two? Do you think we've about covered everything?
Yeah.
I think so.
Kylie, Kaitlin, I'll see you both soon. And listen, I've really enjoyed it. I knew it was going to be a long one. 3 recruiters on the show. We're never going to be lost for words for you two. And I'll see you both soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.